Chad?
Thank you, Mayor. As some of you know, I'm Chad Beckett. I represent Prairie Birds Network and several local citizens. Mayor Lucas, members of the board. I want to reflect what you said a moment ago, sir. This is a democracy. We are here to speak our minds, and we're to do it respectfully. We're to hear each other, we're to take our turn, and we're to be polite as we do it. Because at the end, this affects everyone here. Everything that we do has an effect on everyone here. And so, to the extent my voice is added to it, I do so respectfully. I ask that everyone do the same. We've been here for several meetings over the last several months, addressing the main issue that's here before the board tonight. The village is about to probably vote on a matter to provide treated water to Sunrise Coal. It's a contract that has had many permutations, many changes, many amendments, some in the dark, some in the light, maybe for good reasons, maybe for whatever reason, but we are here tonight. But whether or not the village has dotted its I's and crossed its T's, whether it is here to vote tonight for it because inertia brings it that way, because $50,000 has been spent, so let's keep the ball rolling, or because we had a straw vote last month and it came up where it was a slight positive, let's keep the ball rolling, or because it's only just the first step in so many steps before the mine could actually come about, let's just go ahead and do this so that we can keep on with other business and get this out of the way. My counsel and my request, and those are the people that I represent, is simply step back and think about what you're about to do. It's not about any of those things. It's not even about whether you're persuaded by me. It's whether you are advocating for the people of this village, whether what you do is going to help them in the long run or hurt them. And please be mindful of that. It takes 3 of you tonight. There are 5 board members here tonight.
Yes.
In the you may have heard Mayor Lucas plans to vote for this. He did at the straw poll, and it's his right if certain situations allow it. If you are tied tonight, if you are 2-2 with one abstention, he can vote tonight. If 3 of you say yes, he can pile on, as it were, and make it 4-1, or 5-1 at that point, or however it would work. 4-2, it would be 4-2. But if 3 of you stand up and just say no, this may all be very well done tonight. You don't need to worry about whether they might get water someplace else. You don't need to worry about whether there's some other benefit that the village is going to lose as a result of this. You can end this tonight. And you can move on with the other business that might actually benefit this village. So please consider that. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beckett. I think it's Eileen Ward or something.
I'll pass for now.
Thank you. Susan Forsythe.
I'm Susan Forsythe. I live in Monroe, Illinois. First, I'd like to publicly thank those on the board that voted against the sale of water, and I hope that by the end of this evening, some of the no votes maybe will change to yes. Maybe you guys will change your mind. I have a petition here that I started online for anybody to sign, not just Homer residents, but I started on the 1st of February that has gotten over 600 signatures since I started it. And it's not just people from Homer, it's people from Champaign, from Urbana, from Sydney, from Broadlands, from as far away as Los Angeles, that people who have lived here in the past. I plan on delivering it to Chapin Rose next month, hopefully getting some more signatures. And he's going to forward it to the General Assembly and Governor, so hopefully they can get this sorted out before the mine even reaches the permitting stage. And I want you to note in the petition that I'm going to give to you the wide range of comments, and to piggyback on what Chad said, your decision tonight doesn't just affect Homer. It affects the surrounding areas, the surrounding communities. It's a much broader scope than I think the village limits, which actually brings up another issue, which maybe Chad just answered, but with not all trustees present, how can this vote happen? Just out of curiosity. So anyway, my purpose for the petition is to stop Sunrise altogether, because I feel like the last thing Illinois needs is a coal mine to sell the our beautiful land and livelihoods of the occupants of the land, especially given the coal industry's penchant to disregard regulations illustrated by the fines that Sunrise has paid at its R&R mine, or the lawsuit that was brought against the owners of the Murdoch mine. Is that really the kind of business that you want here, one that disregards the safety and welfare of the very people that make it profitable? Do you really want to put your community members at risk like that? What's more, Mayor Lucas, I have to ask you, you've repeatedly said that this is all judgment calls and that the issue of coal and water are separate. They're not. They're, in your words, they are unassailably, they're tied together. Without Homer's water and an alternative source of water, there is no mine, period. I'm sorry you can't see that, but what makes it worse is that alternatives to this apparent budget shortfall in the water department evidently weren't publicly discussed outside of Sunrise's deep pockets. Sunrise is apparently the be-all, end-all to these fiscal problems Homer has, and I and a lot of others just can't understand why profit is put above residents' right to a healthful environment. You say that it's not up to the village to take care of such issues, but I vehemently disagree. And I counter that it is indeed your fiduciary duty to prevent them. To begin with, I would be willing to pay more to keep Sunrise out, and quite honestly, I might actually pay my bill on time if there were serious considerations for alternatives. The thing is, gentlemen, many of you won't be around when Sunrise uses up the land that it plans on mining. It'll be my generation that will have to clean up the mess. And I'm begging you not to make it our problem. It will be very expensive and difficult to fix, if it even can be. The decision you make tonight will affect generations to come, and I'm asking you for all to vote no on this to protect the land, water, and air instead of Homer's balance sheet that can be fixed in other less damaging and detrimental ways. And finally, please keep in mind that by voting yes, you open the door to Sunrise by selling the water. I think we can all agree that you have more opposition than you have support. And that really should tell you something. Voting against your constituency, what they want, and what they've repeatedly asked of you is not a democracy.
Suzanne Smith.
My name is Suzanne Smith, and I am a rural resident of Homer. First, I would like to thank the board for all of your time and effort over the past few months as you have considered your issues, educated yourselves, and done your best to thoroughly review the pros and cons of this issue. I appreciate your time and dedication that you have given to our community. Please remember, we are a farming community. We have a rich and colorful history, and through these past few months, I believe we have come to realize that the farmers, the Homer residents, and the environment all rely on each other. Your no vote tonight is much broader than a no to the sale of sewer and potable water for a coal mine. This is not about a yes or no to coal. Your no vote tonight is a step toward the community values we have and desire to protect, including clean and plentiful water for our local residents, our community neighbors, and for the Saltport River. Please vote no on this contract with Sunrise Coal. Thank you.
Thank you. Herb Lacey.
Yeah, I'm somewhat concerned. I've reviewed the contract and I see no mention of the sale of outflow from the sewer plant water, which worries me a little bit that means, and also I read in the paper that there's some discussion about maybe negotiating the sale of raw water. That concerns me deeply. I don't believe that the Homer board should be at all involved in the sale of raw water. I believe your own lawyer told you that anything over 100,000 gallons, Mr. Rhodes, in one of his discussions, told you that the sale of anything over 100,000 gallons would open you up to review by 2 or 3 more government entities, and also that it might open you up to liability, you and the village up to liability. For example, the destruction of wells, etc. So although I'm not arguing against this contract, I want to further caution you about any negotiations for all. But also that I believe the sale of raw water, which might include our wells or the well at Ogden, would endanger homes and water supply.
Thank you. Our time's about up.
I didn't have a chance to sign in, but can I speak a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
For those who don't know me, my name is Stan Harper. I farm north and south of Ogden. I'm recently the new Champaign County Board rep for this area. And I know Champaign County Board cannot say a thing about the coal mines it lays in Virginia County. I was approached by several area farmers, small parcel owners here 6 weeks ago, and I've been to a couple of your meetings listening. As a farmer, I have major concerns that what the coal could do to a potential 19,000 of some of the prime farm ground anywhere in this world. Another aspect of it, as a property owner, whether you own a house, farm ground, whatever, I don't know the total amount of money the village stands to make. But that 19,000 acres out there has millions and millions of dollars of assessed valuation, which creates your tax dollars to keep your schools open, your fire districts, your libraries, any taxing property in this area. Are you willing to risk your farm ground losing value? The next thing you know, as any of you know, the state's broke. If you're expecting states to fund your schools and fire districts, it's not going to happen. When they come back to you and want more property taxes on ground that's lost value, are you willing to pitch in and keep your schools and fires open? I think it's a long-range thing everybody knows. As a farmer, property taxes are the two worst things I want to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For listening.
Okay, we're going to end our discussion now, our public comment. We're going to go on to the first item agenda, or the agenda item rather, old business, the actual contract for selling the treated water and sewer services to Sunrise Coal. Everyone should have that final version. Should have been in your inbox in your email. We had it posted on our website, and if you have any questions on the contract itself, Paul is going to do his best to answer that, and I'm sure Mr. Jurgens can also help to answer any questions. So this time, open to the board for discussion. Any questions and comments on the contract sale for the sale of water and sewer services?
Could I make an
Yes,
initial
please.
remark or two? As you know, Mr. Rhodes, James Rhodes, a Chicago attorney specializing in municipal utility law, has assisted the village over the last several month period in attempting to represent the village's interest and respond to directions from the board to prepare an appropriate contract for the provision of potable water and sanitary sewer services as the board has directed. I, as the local municipal lawyer for the village, have been the liaison between Mr. Lucas and trustees and Mr. Rhodes. And I am aware and have explained to you individually by emails that Mr. Rhodes, and in that capacity as our special legal counsel, has, in consultation with Jeff Jurgens, the gentleman to my right, who is the Sunrise Coal Company's attorney, have engaged in discussions and analyses of language that, as to Mr. Rhodes, would serve the village's interest, as to Mr. Jurgens would represent or serve the interest of Sunrise Coal. And over the last several weeks and days, that process has resulted in the contract that was emailed to you last Friday, which reflected some revisions from a contract which he had mailed to you, I believe, the week before. And that's the way the process worked and should work, I suggest. And then today, we had a one-word change in that contract, which you're all aware of, is Mr. Juergens. And the contract that you have before you is the net result of that process. The approval of this contract will be accomplished, I've advised, by the passage of an ordinance approving the contract, which I furnished to you, and it simply approves the contract and has a provision in it to assure that all the village's expenses have been satisfied. So with that background, and I should also mention that with respect to the voting for this, for every ordinance and for any contract or any motion or resolution that would effect this contract requires a majority of the 7 current members of the board and the mayor. So 4 votes are required. I've explained this to you in email, but I think it's important to mention it again. And so if there are 3 trustee votes in favor of a motion to pass the ordinance approving the contract, then the mayor is able to vote if he so chooses, because his vote, if it's affirmative, would be the vote that would effect the passage of the ordinance. And that's true regardless of the absence of Trustee James. That doesn't really have any bearing on it. The number of votes required are 4 of you 7. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions on the contract?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Paul, why are we voting on an ordinance and not the contract?
It is the same, it's the same thing, but the way that you approve this contract is by ordinance. You could also do it by a motion or resolution, but the way that I presented it and Mr. Rhodes recommended is that we utilize an ordinance.
I've never done it this way. Of course, we haven't had a contract
I
like this.
don't think
guess.
I've ever done this.
The voting requirements, by the way, are the same, as I've mentioned to you.
Whether it be a
Motion or
motion,
resolution or ordinance. Still would require 4 votes because of the substance of the contract.
Do we have any other questions?
Are we going over the contract or?
No.
Okay, I do have one question, Paul. I'd ask Mr. Rhodes to, under Section 8, rates for sewer service, or water and sewer service, to put in
What?
industrial 8 and industrial customer. And I don't know if I was the only one that requested that, so they didn't put it in there, or if you guys didn't think it was necessary.
I think that that was discussed at length between Mr. Rhodes and Mr. Juergens, and I believe the language that is in the document was thought by Mr. Rhodes to sufficiently cover the village's interest, no matter what might happen in the future. And we can ask Mr. Rhodes for further comment on that tonight by telephone if you so choose. But that's my understanding, Mr. Juergens.
Yes, since the village doesn't have an industrial rate, I think we thought that we wanted to keep with what's in the current code. And we also agreed to, at the last meeting, I think we had agreed we would just pay the same rate as everybody else. And in this contract, you'll notice there's 125%. So we're actually paying a higher rate than what all of your other customers will be paying. But we wanted that tied to a rate that's currently existing within the ordinances.
The only reason I wanted industrial in there was to keep from tying the hands of future board, keeping a cap on that. There's the reason I wanted industrial left in there. Now, if I remember right, Mr. Rhodes originally had that in the contract and was asked by you to take that
Yes.
wording out. Here, Mr. Rhodes is a municipal lawyer, and I trust his wording.
And, well, we don't have it in our current ordinance. We don't have an industrial classification in the ordinance currently. We could put it in there, but I think we should do that prior to entering into a contract. We should make a change in our ordinance if we wanted to have an industrial class. And currently, we do not have industrial class of customers in town. And this actually wouldn't be an industrial use of water. This would be a commercial use, because they're not using this for industrial purposes. They're using it in their bathhouse, for drinking, and for other commercial uses, similar to other commercial customers in town. So that was my thinking behind that. And I wrote this up and discussed this with Mr. Juergens as well.
What is the final, the 125% of the rate? What is the official dollar per gallon then?
$1 more.
Yeah, about $1 more.
So it would be $4.25 per 1,000 gallons. Is that correct? Because the percentage is the only thing that is listed, so
Right.
I want to see a number and not just.
It's whatever is our current posted rate. So currently, our rate is $3.25 or $3.15?
$3.25.
$3.25 per 1,000. So times 1.25. Times 1.25. And then whenever we change or amend our ordinance on our water rates, this would go up based on that. 125% of whatever the current rate would be.
$4.06.
$4.06.
Yeah, 406.
And sewer fees are $4.
Sewer would be
And sewer would be,
similar.
440. Is that right?
40. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
394.
393.
394.
394.
Other questions? Mike? You found satisfaction, or would you like to talk to Mr. Rhodes?
Okay.
All right. If there are no other questions on the contract, unless, Jordan, did you have any other comments on the contract? No. Okay. At this time, we would move to the ordinance that would enact the contract.
Actually, approve it.
Approve it?
And I would ask,
Can't find it.
I didn't hear any remarks that make me think that we need Mr. Rhodes' input, at least so far. Right. So then, President Lucas, the appropriate motion, if a board member so chooses, would be to pass ordinance number 021113, an ordinance approving a water supply and sewer services contract with Sunrise Coal LLC as presented.
Do I hear that motion?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. There are four sections in this ordinance. Section 1 basically just says that the water supply and sewer service contract between the Village of Homer and Sunrise Coal, as attached, is hereby approved. Section 2 deals with the payment of costs that were to be reimbursed by Sunrise Coal. I'd like to just check with the treasurer if all outstanding bills and invoices either have been paid or can be paid with our existing funds.
Yes, I did write checks this evening for all the bills that I've received, and we do have sufficient funds.
Okay. So section 2 then is satisfied?
And that's
Condition?
funds from payments by Sunrise Coal.
Yes.
Thank you.
And there was a remainder, I believe, or?
There's a
Okay.
remainder.
And that's to be returned to Sunrise Coal. Section 3 then says, upon satisfaction of conditions set forth in Section 2, the village president and the clerk hereby authorized to execute the water supply sewer services contract. So we have a motion. The terms of the ordinance are satisfied. Do we have a second? I have a second by Larry. And we need a roll call vote, please.
Kevin? Larry?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Roy?
No.
And Dave?
I'm not going to vote. We
Okay.
have 3 noes.
Right.
So that indicates that there is either a problem with the contract or is disagreement with the substance of the initiative. So at this time, we would either have to go back and renegotiate the contract to determine if there's some change that needs to be made. Or otherwise, the motion is not passed.
Yes, the motion did not
The ordinance is not
receive,
passed.
the motion did not receive 4 votes, so the ordinance does not pass.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, the board can consider the ordinance, the contract with some modification at some time if that's what's desired, and it probably will have to be determined by some discussion.
Yes, and I didn't know if anyone wanted to carry that. I mean, Mike would be the, I would go to you first. Is there a condition in the contract that you would like to see changed? Or is there a substantial disagreement with the concept here?
Yeah, there's no changes. That would change my mind.
Okay, so it's not the contract that you're voting no on. In other words, the inclusion of industrial that you
No.
brought up or something like that is not an issue?
No.
Okay. I'm afraid that is all we can do at this time. We'll be in discussion if there needs to be any changes or if we can re-present this contract. Okay. Is there any, there's some other additional?